smudge bowl here, because it's a good time to consider what our medicines do. I mentioned earlier that we're going to be cleaning out our garden for the year for winter season. And I want to make sure that I'm healthy and thinking things, good thoughts and everything, you know, when I go out, because that garden is really meaningful for people. And when we can feed people from that garden, it really makes us feel good inside. So I want to make sure that it's prepared for the winter properly and that we have it ready for the springtime when spring comes along. So I want to cleanse myself off the best I can. And when I hear about our teachings, we talk about our medicines being able to do just that. And so I practice this pretty much every day. I usually do pipe ceremonies in the morning and take care of all that while this time of year, sunrise is a little bit later, so I don't have to get up so early. So that's good with me too. But I like getting up early in the morning and taking care of that. So I'm gonna, if you have smudge, you're totally welcome to do that. If you don't, that's fine. But just something to do. I don't know if you can see the smoke very well, but it's really nice smelling, and it really gives me a good feeling inside to be able to take our medicines and to grow with it. As I said, I'm here at the office today, and we have a machine, because when we were smudging at the college a couple of times, we had a couple people thought we were smoking something in here that we shouldn't have been in. and it kind of turned into questions about it. So we invented a machine called the Smudginator. And what it does, it's actually a ventilation system that takes the smudge right out of the room here and goes directly outside. And it was just a simple thing to do. And it sure alleviated a lot of issues that we have with smudging. I've been really trying to avoid policies here at Conestoga, just because when you have policies, you have rules attached to things like smudging and things like that. And I've looked at some of the other schools, and some of those rules that come with smudging and stuff is pretty strict. You have to have a fire extinguisher nearby, and you have to have somebody with CPR and all kinds of crazy stuff, right? So I for the 13 years that I've been here, I've been trying to really avoid policies, just making it natural, you know, that when we practice our ceremonies, it's nothing different. It's just a natural thing that we do. And I just make sure our students don't have a huge smudge where you're going to get everybody all, all smoked out. Do it respectfully, and I don't think there's ever a problem when we do it that way. So now our teachers are doing it, and they're doing it in the classrooms now, and it's really nice to see, and the more that we keep the policies out of our ceremonies, I think the better. But we got to be respectful too, because there are people with asthma and different issues that they'll say they have, and we've never had any problem with it because we've done it in a respectful manner. So I'm glad. And then the Smudginator here helped, because we smudge a lot in here. We have drum nights sometimes, and we smudge, and we do smudge the place out really well. So it works out okay, with the Smudginator. So I'm really glad to come and join you today. I got a little bit of time to share with you, and behind me you might see, is that backwards to you? Because it's backwards to me. Like, I don't know, the IMF. Everybody, it's straight for everybody, but for me, it's backwards when I look at it. But it's our music fest that we're going on. We've been bringing Indigenous music people into our music fest every year. So tonight at 7, we have a DJ Shub coming in. He'll be sharing some of his wisdom and art with us. Last night we had Keith Silver. I don't know if you ever heard of him, from Six Nations. Amazing singer. Wow. I didn't know him before, but this guy's going to make it really, really big, someday. So he brought his harmonica player and his drummer in, and we had a great night last night listening to him. And then we got a couple of new artists coming up over the next couple of nights. And then on Friday night, there's a young lady who's getting big into country music. Her name is Genevieve Fisher. She'll be actually singing at the CMA Awards coming up in London in a couple of weeks. So she's been nominated. She hasn't won one yet, but she will soon. And I get a chance to open CMA Awards this year with a ceremony. So very fortunate to be able to, that's a country music awards here in Canada. So it's really nice that we're able to do that this year. So I've been really fortunate, to be able to get to know these great people, and working with you at Mohawk, like it's been just a tremendous relationship, building knowledge, with each other and sharing knowledge with our students. Because, as students, it doesn't matter where you go. I think it's just a matter of us learning these things and watching how these organizations can get along really well. I work with McMaster, and I work with University of Waterloo and Western. I work in most of the capacities in an elder role, help teaching, the way that I can. And it's been a great watching the students, complete their journey, their education journey all these years. And I just really think that's a wonderful sight. I keep myself pretty busy. I'm a former chief of my nation. I played that role for a little while, and then I smartened up, and then I got out of it. No, I did. And then, no, but it's an honor, by our nation to be able to ask you to lead. And I did for a while, but I served 4 years on council, and I'm back on council now. So I didn't totally leave it. I still work in the councilor role there, and trying to break free of the Indian Act that's got us hold, and the way people think about chief and council. I think that's really something to talk about, because in our nation, we don't have like a longhouse, that we kept intact all these years. So we only have the one source of Indian Act government, but we're trying to break free of that mold now and try to, build our nation up to be how we normally teach to our clans. And that's why I'm staying into the council role, is because I like to see the transformation of us getting back to our traditional ways of making decisions for our nation that we always have in the past. And so my role now is to really help our nation understand that this system that we have now is really not beneficial, and it sure makes a lot of chaos in our community based on falling under the Indian Act. So I'm going to be one of those that's going to push, to find our own method, and to someday, and hopefully not too long, say goodbye to that racist piece of legislation, that's inhibited our people for so long. And we can get back to our decision making the way that we should. So this is what I teach. I also teach here at Conestoga College. I have my own course here that I wrote, and I deliver 3 courses now here. I also, we've been now teaching. What we thought we would do here is, we know that other teachers teach about Indigenous issues, and I don't know what they teach. So we've now developed a micro credential course that anybody who teaches an Indigenous course or theory or a section in their course, we need to know what it is, so that they're teaching relevant information, and that, we kind of know what they're teaching. Because before, they were just finding something on the internet, or I don't know where they're getting their information from, but we found that to be not accurate a lot of times. And so now it's mandatory for anybody that teaches an Indigenous course to kind of vent it through our department here now. And so at least we can give them good direction on what they want to, they teach what they want, but we can help them with that, with relevant information. And right now I'm pushing to get all Indigenous students that take the Indigenous Studies course exempt from tuition, because you shouldn't learn traditional knowledge and have to pay for it at a college or university. We thought very clearly that, it was the school system that took it away from us, through residential schools and 60 Scoop and all those things. So I have the school now convinced that any Indigenous student, that takes an Indigenous Studies course now, that portion will be exempt from their tuition costs now, because we can't charge them for something that they took away, from us. And so we've been kind of maneuvering in that manner, building a reconciliation strategy, and it's been really good. And I want to bring that out to Mohawk and to all the other schools that I work with, because if we work together and make this kind of mandatory throughout Canada, then I think all of our students will benefit from that. And I think that's something that we really need to invest in, with you as students, because you're our future leaders. You're the ones who's going to make those decisions in policy making in your employment. And I think if we kind of lead that way and show you how to maneuver in a colonial system, then I think, you know, we can do this, and we have to do this. It's so important for us. So these are the roles that I take in life. I work with the OPP as their advisor. They need a lot of work and a lot of advising, as we all know. You know, they don't treat our people well. You've seen what they do when it comes into a confrontation, and our people have been suffering that. So I'm working really closely with the commissioner, trying to get them to understand that a new method has to take place when it comes to dealing with Indigenous people. We can't come in there and bring their battalions and beat our people, you know, the way they always have. So we're building that relationship to build something that's going to be more sustainable and more realistic, you know, when it comes to policing issues. We do need the police, but we need them to act correctly with our people. So I've been really working close with that. But I also work in the Law Society too. I work with all the lawyers in Ontario as Indigenous advisor. So I work with the Law Society of Ontario, trying to regulate the law system here in Canada. The justice system is really cruel to our people. So we need to start changing the perspective from the regulators of the legal profession here in Ontario. And so I've been working closely with them and trying to change things. So that's what I do, kind of on the front of what I do. But my foundation for all this is our traditional knowledge, which I've been very, very honored to have been grounded in. I come from a family of residential school survivors. Both my parents my mother went to the Mohawk in Brantford. My dad went to Mount Elgin School at Chippewa of the Thames, which is my reserve. And they found each other, and then they both decided to leave the reserve because they didn't want their children to be raised like what they thought would be bad for us. So they took us to Detroit and wanted us to blend in with other cultures, like maybe the Mexican culture or whatever. But they thought our chances would be better. We wouldn't have to face what they did, you know, if they take us away from here. And so my first 10 years, we didn't practice much of our culture. We didn't really do a lot of things, except for going to powwows, you know, and things like that. But I was very fortunate to meet a man from Oneida who was living in Detroit at the same time. His name was Dean George. And he pulled me away from the side there and told me that I come from a culture that's really, really, really beautiful. But, you know, if you don't know what it is, it's hard to see it. So he told me about our culture, and he got me, you know, speaking to elders and to knowledge keepers. And I really, you know, thought I found something really good at age 10. But, you know, when you get excited about something and you go home, you want to share that with your family. Well, it didn't go over very well in my family because my parents really thought it wouldn't be a good idea to practice or to learn about this culture that I was born in. They just said, you know, you be a worker, and that's all you really need to do in life is to get by, is to, you know, work hard and you know, and make money, because that's really what they thought was best for us. Only because they were treated or mistreated, you know, at school. So this is how they come up to their thoughts. But when I went home and talked about it, they weren't very happy about that, and really had a hard time, you know, with me learning about my culture. And I remember around age 10, my dad especially, our relationship started dividing, you know, because I really wanted to learn about our language and our culture and medicines and things like that. And it became obvious to me that he didn't want me to participate in that. And I remember that really clearly one day because he, you know, me and my brothers, there were 6 of us, and I was sleeping upstairs with the boys, and woke up one day and all my brothers were gone on a Saturday. And I went downstairs and asked my mother, you know, where everybody went. And my mother said, well, they all went fishing early this morning. And, you know, I asked, you know, how come he didn't wake me up? And in that moment, I remember I realized very clearly that I was the one, because of the journey that I started taking, was not acceptable to him. So he kind of kept me away from everybody else. And I think I got very clear message from him that, if I'm going to follow this journey, well, then I'm just going to, not do anything with you. And I remember that's how life began with him. We started separating, and I started learning more about the culture. I had to make a decision though, whether I wanted to continue learning or have a relationship with my dad. And that's, too young in life to make that kind of decision. Like I didn't know what I was doing and thinking, but I knew I was comfortable with their culture and learning about the culture. So I started following that route and noting more that I was getting more separated from him because he just wasn't involving me in things in the family. But I was so comfortable learning it, and I wanted to learn it. All my brothers and sisters kind of followed his path, but I was the one that kind of took the separate path, and it stayed that way through my teen years. As all teens do, we get into trouble. We find ways to get in trouble, and I didn't really have no place to go because, well, my mother was fine, but my dad I couldn't go to him. And then as I became an adult, it's funny. I think back now, at times when you have your like Christmas dinners or family gatherings, you have a feast and dinner. What I see a lot of times in families, when you're done with your feast, you usually go up and tell your parents you love them or hug them or something like that, and then you leave, take your family with you. And then my dad would avoid that moment like the plague. He would like know that the time was coming for the end of the evening, and that's when, especially for me, he didn't want me to go and shake his hand or look him in the eye and say goodbye, Dad, or something like that. So he'd go cut wood, or he'd find a way to get out of the room and go and hide somewhere, not hide, but just get himself busy. And I would take that as a cue to, okay, this is my chance to get out. So I'd get the kids all ready, throw them in the car, and get in the car and go and give my mother a hug. And then my dad would show up again as I'm leaving. He'd wave. So we avoided that moment where we had to hold hands or shake hands or hug or something, or look each other in the eye. And we went through kind of life that way. It's just kind of crazy because, I knew that was happening, and I was the same way. I didn't want to face him and show him any affection, just because this is how our relationship was through our whole adult years. And it just kind of became almost, we'd laugh about it. We'd even be able to talk about it, but we wouldn't be able to show any affection for each other. Just that's the way it was. And, I got to see other families that were able to do that. But I always thought, how come it didn't happen in our family? And, it wasn't until like when he was in his 80s, he decided to, apply for the compensation because he went to residential school. And that compensation, he wasn't going to apply for it because he worked as hard as he was an iron worker in Detroit. He worked really hard, and he had a nice house and everything, worked really hard. So he said, I don't need anything from the government. But it was like a month to the deadline for the application. And he said, well, you know what? I need a new car. I'm going to apply for that money. And so he went and applied, and he had a hearing date. And if you've ever been into one of these hearings with the residential school, they're really excruciating. They're just hard to hear because the way that they paid compensation out was the degree of abuse that you took. And so you had to talk about your abuse and be very detailed about it, because they had check marks. If you were abused this way or that way, you got more compensation. And it was just like awful, to watch an elder go through this process, because my dad put it away. He didn't talk about it his whole life. And it was so deep in him that he almost buried it, where we never knew about his abuse. He never talked about it. But because they pulled it out of him at that meeting, my brother was there, and he said, like, he talked about his abuse. We didn't even know he was abused. He never talked about it. And it all came out. And that night when he came home, he was just sick. He just got really sick that night. We had to take him to emergency because, it all came out. And he was in really good shape. He joined they called the Huff and Puff group in London. So he was a bunch of elders who played sports, and they did things, and he was in really good shape. He walked every day, he took care of himself. But from that moment, things changed. Like at that moment, that night when he went to emergency, we took him there, and it was a downward spiral from that point on. My dad lived 8 months after that. And it just went downhill from that point. And, we contributed to him opening up that Band-Aid, that he covered that wound up for so long. And it really hurt him to talk about that. So when somebody's at that stage of life and you have a moment to talk about them heart to heart, well, even at that time, we still had a hard time talking to each other. We still really, that thing that he had with him about showing affection was so strong that he learned in that school that, we couldn't even do it at the time we knew he was going to pass away. And even in the hospital room, like, I'm okay there with my brothers and sisters there, but when it was just me and him, we had this eerie challenge between us that, it was so hard for us to talk heart to heart, because that's how our relationship, was. He kind of broke down a little bit, and he told me that it was a moment he remembered when I was learning the culture, that he said he couldn't tell me, but he was really proud that I was learning it. He said he wanted me to learn it, but he couldn't tell me that he was proud of me, because that's what the residential school did to him. He said that his whole life he carried this ghost on his back. And every time that he was to show affection to his children, to learn about his culture and love his culture, that ghost would hurt him. And imagine living life that way, knowing that you couldn't embrace your own family, your own children, couldn't embrace your own culture because of what they instilled in him. And it was very clear, that was why he was the way he was. And we finally had that little bit of a conversation, and he told me he was really proud of me all those years that he was watching me learn medicine and to learn about our language and culture, and he just could not tell me. We knew he was dying. He knew he was going to die in a day or two, and we finally had that conversation, which wasn't a lot, but it opened the doors up to our whole wasted relationship, our whole life. That ghost killed our relationship, right from age 10 when I started learning the culture. And he didn't want that, that really wasn't the way he wanted it to be. But, that ghost would hurt him when he wanted to tell me he was proud of me. So we finally did, on his final day of life. And I'll always remember that, maybe I did take a decision. I could have followed what he wanted me to do and just become a worker and a slave to labor like he was. And then I wouldn't know what I know today. So my brothers and sisters now, they support me. They let me know, that they still kind of follow the same route. They work, and I'm the one who got to know our culture more and our medicines, and became really important to our family now that I practice these things, because I do all the funerals and the weddings on our nation, and I do this every day as a way of being. But now I teach it. And I think of my dad, and I think about what that school did to us. We're all affected by it. Everybody who, even if you didn't have a close relative that went, the cost of our culture was really what took place at that school. And if they if they knew their language, they didn't know it when they came out, and they weren't able to pass that on to you, this next generation. So, you're all victims of that school. We're all victims of that school. Canada is a victim of that school because of the knowledge that our people can present to this place where we live called Canada. Our medicines, and if we were able to keep our water safe, and we're able to, pass messages on that help us all live together in this world, I think this world would be a better place. But because of the school, because of what we went through. So now that we've come out of the school age, now I think about you as youth, you people, that are challenging yourself, all our young people that are challenging themselves. to learn their culture and to be balanced in this knowledge that, you know, the world has great scientific knowledge, but we have a spiritual knowledge that has to go and coincide with everything else. And so now I really emphasize on our youth to challenge those directions that we've always taken. You know, if you're taking an engineering course or if you're doing something in the medical field, challenge the thoughts that they teach you so that we can make sure that we're honorable to our earth, our mother, the earth. You know, if an engineering system comes out, how does it affect the earth? You know, because a lot of times, you know, these knowledges that we understand about technology are great, but do they hurt the earth in general? And we have to think about our generations to come. So realistically, whatever field that you're in, you know, think about your role as an Indigenous person and how what they're teaching you coincides with keeping our mother the earth healthy, because that's your challenge, you know, to keep our children in the future a safe place to live. And, you know, once we get to that age and we pass through that Western door, which means we travel back to Creator's world, that knowledge comes to this generation. And what you're learning is how our next generations are going to be. So the farther we get away from our culture and the balance that exists, I think this is really an important time, you know, because now that the residential schools are done and the students today are learning what they're learning, but they need to do it with a cultural balance, with everything that they've been able to find that'll allow the next generation to be stronger. So I really wanted to share that with you today because there's a message today that I wanted to deliver with you. And I know every culture that you come from. We have Inuit people, we have Métis people, we have Blackfoot Cree, we have Lakota, we have Haudenosaunee, we have Anishinaabe, we have Mi'kmaq. We have all these different nations that live on Turtle Island right now. And we have different stories and we have different creation, you know, stories that we understand. But the relationship between all the nations that live on Turtle Island all have a same thread. And it's protecting our mother, the earth, and it's being a part of this land that we were, I would only say blessed to be a part of. And because we have different teachings and different understandings, if we break through that part of it and see the unity that exists between all Indigenous people, you'll find the unifying fact is that we all keep our relationship to our Creator as strong. And it's really why we are such a force here in North America. We have the ability to understand that we still need to respect Mother Earth, and we need to teach that with other people. So when I think about our you know, our differences, I'm more seeing our unity. You know, once we get to that point of realizing the foundation of all that is we are all part of Mother Earth. All our creation stories tell us that we were brought here, and we do things here with the knowledge that we brought to live in conjunction with all parts of creation, the trees, the water, the fish, the animals that are here. And that's going to be our unifying factor. And that's the same story across the world. You know, when you look at Indigenous people, they have the same stories. They have the same understanding that they were brought to this world to show respect, to show honor, to live this life with the gifts that Creator gave them, and to make sure that they teach these to our next generation. So I can go to the Muslim community, I can go to the Asian communities that, you know, and in my life, I've been able to meet a lot of these different communities. I was invited to England a couple of years ago to their Muslim gathering. We had over, I think about 75,000 Muslims come to honor their teachings. And I got a chance to talk to their highest holiness that they use as that man, you know, who kind of is their leader. And we sat down and had a good conversation. And I found so many similarities to Indigenous relationships to the earth and to theirs. And when I met people from other parts of the world, I have some friends in Nigeria, and we have these same conversations. And the similarities are just amazing. You know, Indigenous people, I think, in the world have kept true to the teachings that they have been instructed to learn and to teach. And this is where I'm seeing where this world kind of needs to follow that basic path of relationship again. And if we can kind of build that back into the way that we live and separate the politics, separate the differences that come with politics, then I think we can probably start, you know, that unifying relationship with other parts of the world. Because if we don't, then I just refer back to our second creation story that we understand when the human people on earth started separating so far that the world had to be reborn again. And one of our Nanabujo stories was the world got flooded and we had to rebuild the earth again because humans took it out of context and they started fighting each other, and it became to a point where something had to be done, and the waters filtrated the earth, and it took the life of all the beings. And when the water was filled, the earth, when Anabujo was able to reach into the water and to find some of that soil, and Creator was able to recreate the earth with the understanding that we wouldn't fall back into the way that we were before and separate and fight and, you know, have distance. So, you know, I started thinking about one of the prophecies. They call it the seventh fire prophecies. I don't know if you ever heard of this before, but it's a prophecy that the Anishinaabe people have always kept. There was a elder from Kitigan-Zibi in Quebec. He was a wampum belt keeper that told the story of the seventh fire. And I won't go through the whole story because it's a long story, but it talks about our relationship on this earth and how the Anishinaabe people come from the Atlantic coastways, but had to change their direction because the earth was going to be inhibited by people of a light-skinned race that would come to North America and try to change the direction that the Indigenous people here lived under. So under the seven fires prophecy, there was 7 stopping places. And each stopping place told us about what we needed to do. One of them was to find a place where food grows on water. And we weren't sure really what that meant, but we knew that that was where our destination would lead us to the teachings that we need to have. And at the time of the third fire, or the second fire actually, we would be met by the newcomers to North America. And they said that if we were to meet with them in a good way, we could actually work together real great. We can actually make the nation here in Turtle Island one of the greatest in the world. Then we were met with the 2 other races that were on the earth, and we would live a great life here because the knowledge and technology would be shared. But they also said if we meet the light-skinned race and they were sick and they were angry, we would be maybe lulled into a new way of thinking, which would, I guess, develop a system where science and technology would take over the world, but omit the spiritual side of the world. And if we do that, then we get lulled into a way of life that will take us away from our culture and our teachings. And sometimes I see that with our kids, you know, like I have a grandson who's 9, and I teach him some of our songs, and I try to sit with him and help him understand, you know, our culture and our way of being. But then when he gets a computer next to him, it's a challenge for me because he wants to go on the computer, and it's such a draw for him. Like he'll sit there with me for a little while, and I'll teach him some songs, but then he want to get on that computer, and you know that technology just absorbs him. And then I have to kind of pull him off of that and take him outside and show him things that I want him to know. But I see the challenge that it takes, you know, for a young person to get caught up in the technology world. And this is why I challenge, you know, myself and families, you know, to take time off of that, you know, easy way of learning, like to pick up something on Google and learn about your culture that way. because the real way is to sit with your elders, your grandmothers and grandparents, you know, and people have knowledge, and let them show you these things. Sit in the bush sometimes, talk to the plants, talk to the animals, look at the water, because with all that knowledge in balance, I think it gives you a chance to do and be successful at what you want to do in life, because now you'll have the support of our Mother the Earth, giving you that medicine to help you heal, to give you that chance to balance that out. So I always tell people, you know, 4 times out of the year, we live in a place where we have 4 seasons: winter, spring, summer, and fall. And we live in a fast-paced life, like school and our children and work and bills and everything, you know, gets us, we have to move fast. But every now and then we have to pull away from that fast life. 4 times out of the year, walk away from that fast life and sit with our Mother the Earth. And you can call it a fasting ceremony if you want, but it's just a matter of you connecting with our Mother the Earth for a little while. It's taking you away from that fast-paced life. And then you can re-energize yourself, and you can be better when you get back to that life. So now that winter's coming, consider a time when you can go and be by yourself and sit with Mother Earth, because she'll teach you things. She'll give you that balance and rest and relaxation that your body's craving. Go sit with her, sit by the water, you know, look at our beautiful Mother the Earth and how we are part of this creation. And then go back in that fast-paced life, and then you're better, you're stronger, your mind is open, your ability to speak is better, your balance is better. And then when that time comes for spring, do the same thing. Go out there and look at those medicines that grow when the maple syrup starts, when the fish start spawning, you know, and when the medicines start growing and the snow starts disappearing. You start looking at life in that time, and then do it in the summertime. That's a very simple thing to do. You just have to dedicate yourself to wanting to balance all that out with. Because I'm not saying, you know, take away what you're learning, because you're learning great things, and there's great things in the way that you're learning to do. But the balance is really the most important thing. To have yourself know that you're Indigenous. You're somebody that comes from this earth. You're somebody that comes from the Mother that brought you to this earth. And even in our farewell ceremony, when somebody moves on to the Creator's world, we say that, and even in the Haudenosaunee community, they notice that the body that was made up of who we are was made up of our Mother the Earth. It's all components of our Mother the Earth, and that's what separates when we leave this world. Our spirit moves on to Creator's world, but our body stays here, and that's why we bury our bodies here, or sometimes we do the burning ceremony, you know, which is a way that some people do things too. But it all ends up back to the earth. Some people put it in the water, the ashes, or put it into the earth, but we all become part of Mother Earth again, and that's where our body goes. But our spirit is very, very strong, and it goes back to Creator. So last week, I did the Feast of the Dead ceremony here in the Kitchener area. We invited members of the community and anybody who wanted to come, because we have a lodge that we built here, and we invited people to come. This ceremony is for people who have been affected by grieving over the last year or two, and are still in that phase of grieving, of losing somebody. So what we do at the ceremony is that we honor these people for coming, or, you know, for being strong enough to come and to sit with the members there. And I mentioned earlier, when we leave this world, in our teaching is that the Western door opens up and our spirit travels through that Western door. The only time we use a Western door in our lodge is when the spirit goes back to Creator. So at the Feast of the Dead ceremony, we keep that door closed, but we make it available to use. And so the people that come into the ceremony, they sit on the edges of the lodge, and we do our prayers and thoughts. And then everybody gets up and they walk toward that Western door, and they put their tobacco, or they put their prayers in that tobacco for all those who had traveled back to Creator's world. We still think about them. We grieve for them. We wish they were still here. We wonder why they had to go. But we know that Creator has bless them with Creator's arms, and all those ancestors in the past, welcome them back to the Creator's world. And so as we walk by that Western doorway, we give our thoughts and thanks to them, for giving us that time that we had to share with them. And it's a beautiful moment, because without knowing why we grieve, sometimes we continue for way too long. Creator didn't put you on the earth to be sad, to grieve, for all your days. But Creator said, in the 4 seasons that we live in the one year period, you come back a year later, and then sometimes people have a fire and they'll bring poems or stories or gifts that they have to that person, and we put it in the fire and we send it up in the smoke to Creator. And then that's really the official ending of the grieving period, although we grieve longer. But if we don't have a boundary line to it, sometimes we don't know when to stop grieving, because I see people grieving for years and years and years, and I watch them in pain, all those years. And it's sad to watch when somebody is in that mode. It just, like, when we do have a method that allows us to understand that life really needs to be a good place for us, and to cherish every moment, because the people that we have here and the ones that we love, we don't know how long they're going to be here. We don't have that, instructions to say that we're only here for so long, but we can do the best we can while we're here. And we can give thanks to those who moved on, through our thoughts and prayers and ceremonies that we have. And so really that's what that Feast of the Dead ceremony is. And all people grieving in that period will actually help each other, through that process. So we do it every October and November. We take care of that, and we get a lot of people come out, and it helps them a lot. And I really feel good when we do that, because we've honored their loved ones the best way we can. And these are things that I think we're trying to get back to, trying to find our way to have the ability to know that these ceremonies, they're sacred, they're strong. And when you learn them, you can pass those on to the next generation, that have to have these teachings. And that's why I think, now that we're away from the residential school days, we can gather this knowledge. And when you talk to, like, the other elders, sometimes you'll get a little confused, because you'll hear differences in the teachings sometimes. And I always tell people, don't think of it as differences, think of it as knowledge that you're gathering. So take it all in. All of our teachings are not going to be similar, like our creation stories and the way that we've come up to understand knowledge. But you can take it all in, because Creator gave you a heart to learn that knowledge, and to make sure that that knowledge is used to the best it can be in what you've picked up from it. So that's the worry I get when people sometimes choose not to learn things, because they're confused about the differences that they hear in elders' stories. And I think that's why some people get a little more confused, and they quit following that route, because they just don't know how to, determine the differences, and how to pull the good out of all of it. So that's why life, I think, is so nice, because there's so many different stories that we can learn something good out of all of them. So when I go and talk to my friends from Nigeria and New Zealand and Mexico and New Orleans, people that I know really well, we have these kind of conversations. And this is why I'm pushing this really hard for the OPP, for the Law Society, for the colleges, for the students, to learn these things, or to hear about these things, so that now that we have a strength within the culture to make the changes that we're looking forward to. I think this is why Creator brought me to this earth. I had to find my gifts, and the gifts that Creator gave me, it took a while, and it cost me a lot too. It cost me my relationship with my dad. Like I told you, it was really, if I didn't follow that route, I would never know what I know now. So I give thanks every day through the pipe ceremony in the morning. And I make sure that, I give thanks to those who are in the Creator's world, to know that we still think about them and honor them, and we love them, and I give thanks to Creator for giving me what I've had in this world. So I know a lot of our elders, they don't live real long. Like, we have some elders who are in their 80s and 90s, and that's really, really great. But our people are dying quite young now. The average age of our people is 15 years less than non-native society right now. And it's getting worse. Like, we thought it would be going in the better direction, but it's actually going in the wrong direction. I think because we've been getting away from our culture, because we're not eating our food that we're supposed to eat, and we're not giving thanks the way that we're supposed to. So I think it's costing us the lives that we have, the time that we have on earth. And so I learned this because the healers that I work with, the elders that I work with, I've seen them in bad health. And so I wanted to make a change in my life. And I mentioned this a couple of times before. I started exercising and taking care of myself and walking. So I lost about 60 pounds since COVID hit, because I want to be around for a while with these things that I've been able to learn. And I need to take control of that myself too. Like, I don't know how many days I have on the earth. Creator only knows that. But I do know if I take care of myself better, I can probably live a little bit longer. At least I can do my part. So I watch what I eat. Sugar and food and exercise is really important for me now, so that I can kind of, at least do my part and then learn more knowledge, because I always sit with elders and I always learn different things. And this is why I come and talk to you about all my experiences, that I think is something that we can all learn by. I'm not saying everything that I say and do is the way everything should be, but I just sharing you with what my experiences are. And if you'd like to know them, I can, spend more time talking to you about these things, because in my head, in my heart, this is where it all lives. And these are how my classes go too. We kind of sit and we share knowledge together, because Creator gave you knowledge too. Creator gave you gifts. And there's nothing that I can say that would make me any more inferior to you or a child, because a child has knowledge that they bring here. So if we put us in a circle and we're all together, we're all human beings sharing our experiences together. We might have different experiences and we might have differences of opinion of things. But if we sit together and talk about those things, maybe we won't walk away feeling that this person's an enemy, because we have a chance to share our differences. We can walk away with the same misunderstandings or differences, but at least we can sit down and talk to each other about them. And I think that's really where society has changed course. If we disagree with somebody and we hold strong to our beliefs, and this person doesn't agree with us, sometimes we walk away in anger. Sometimes we walk away in fighting mode, because you see that in American politics today. Look what's going on down there. When one person wants to, do something, it creates a division. So the states is really separated now, between, political allies in theory. So the Indigenous people are here to try to pull people back together, to say that we can have differences, but we can do it respectfully, in a way that we were told our seven grandfather teachings would allow us to understand that. Do it in honesty, bravery, integrity, and all those things that come with a balance. So if we kind of live under those guidelines, we can make those differences, and we can live together on this earth so much more pleasantly, which I think we really need to do at this point, and to share this knowledge. So I just wanted to share that with you today. I wanted to offer you this little song here that, when I think about our heartbeats, and when we walk together in a heartbeat that beats at the same time, imagine how strong and how wonderful we would be. So this heartbeat that comes from our mother, the earth, she's always trying to tell us, when you walk on the earth, feel the vibration that she's sending. When you go to a powwow, you see those dancers, they dance because they feel the earth giving them medicine. And that medicine is through that heartbeat. So that drum will bring us back to that mother. We'll share this at this moment. Way up, hey, hey, hi, way up, hey, hey, way up, hey, hey, way up, hey, hey, hey ya hey ya ho hey. Way ya hey ya hey hi ya way ya hey ya hey way ya hey ya hey ha way ya hey ya hey ya ho hey hi ya hey ya ho hey way hi yo way hi ya hey ya ho hey way ya hey ya hey hi ya way ya hey ya hey way ya hey ya hey ha way ya hey ya hey ya ho hey hi ya hey ya ho hey way hi yo way hi ya hey ya ho hey. And the final verse of the song is a special one. It goes to those that have walked through that western door and are with Creator today. So we always save the final verse of the song for those loved ones who are in Creator's world, who showers down our love through the sun rays and through the wind and through the rain that comes and the snow that comes from the heavens. And we know that they're thinking about us because we feel that love when we look at all those beautiful things in creation. And we honor them with this final verse that requires no heartbeat, because the heartbeat is only used when you walk on our mother, the earth. When Creator decides that it's time for you to come back to Creator's world, the first thing that Creator does is to take the heartbeat away. And then now you're in the hands of our beautiful Creator in the loving arms that those ancestors embrace you with. So we honor this part of the song to all of them. Way hey hey hi way hey hey way hey hey way hey hey ho hey hi hey ho hey way hi yo way hi hey hey ho hey way hey hey yo. Oh, I love those elders. I love those teachings, and I love being around you guys. You know, you guys inspire me and make me feel good when we get a chance to talk about these things. So, holy cow, our hour's up already. I can't believe it. It was such a treat, you know, in my day. Now I'm going to look after the grounds a lot better because I feel your spirit. I feel the wisdom and strength that you have, and you've given me some incentive now to look after our mother, the earth, with these hands in the best way I can. So I want to thank you. You know, I know I did all the talking, but, you know, I felt your spirit and I felt that your strength and love here today.